So at the end of every down market, there's an up market. And there are all kinds of people in the commercial real estate industry right now that got in after 2010, 2011. And if that's true of you listening right now, and this is your first down market, you really need to hear this. There's always a recovery after. Hey, this is Bo Barron, owner and managing director of Barron Commercial Group. And he's zoning out right now, but that's Timmy Barron, ADHD, actor and comedian.
Oh, are we doing that?
I'm already done with this. Hey, let's start over. Hey, this is Bo Barron, owner and managing director of Barron Commercial Group.
And then this is Timmy Barron, owner, and I don't own much. I'm an actor. I'm learning about commercial real estate. He's teaching me about commercial real estate.
What's the name of our podcast here?
Commercially Speaking.
All right, let's do it. What a train wreck.
It's back to you and me, so I'm excited. What are you teaching me?
Today we're going to talk about market cycles. And if I'm being honest, I wanted to have a guest in. There's like the godfather of commercial real estate market cycles. It's Dr. Miller. We're going to be talking about him a lot during this episode because he came up with the concepts that we're going to be talking about. This is all about supply and demand. What do you understand about supply and demand and how they work together?
I think I've got a pretty good grasp on it because of the Wolf of Wall Street. I've got the script actually in here.
Like the entire script?
Yeah, Tara bought it for me in New York because on the ship, one of like the first movies we watched together was Wolf of Wall Street. And, you know, between you and I, we never got through it.
Like our listeners don't know what you're talking about on the ship. Like you got to at least give us 2 minutes about the ship.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a good point. I met my wife on a cruise ship. We were both working on the cruise ship. She is from Ireland. Because that's a lot of times people are like, how did you meet? Because we'll be like, she's from Ireland. She was working as a port shopping consultant, not a pork chopping consultant. That'd be a butcher. It was my second contract with the Second City. So I was performing as a part of the cast of the Second City, improv and sketch comedy, based out of Chicago. But most people are familiar with Second City. They had a contract set up with Norwegian Cruise Lines. So I did a cruise ship, and I made really good friends with the port shopping consultant on the first ship. So when I got on this new ship, I went straight to the port shopping consultant channel where they're just giving presentations of all the ports and where to shop. And
I have not heard this story.
You haven't heard? Okay, so I go in, I'm rooming with the musical director, Nick Gage, and I turn it on just to see who's going to be my new friend. You know, like, who is it? And I see Tara on there, like, giving presentations. I was like, whoa, wow. Whoa, my new friend. Look at my new friend. So in the ship, right in the middle of the ship, there's a crew bar. And this is where the crew will go at the end of the night. $1 beers. You know, you would see most of the people that are working on the ship down there. And so ultimately, the first time I met her was in the crew bar. And I had noticed like a few of those presentations on the TV, you know, you flub your words every once in a while. No big deal, whatever. And I thought it'd be cute to be like, hey, I saw you on the TV. I think maybe you should do a second take, right? Like a little jab, little whatever. She was like, excuse me? I was like, oh, it did not go well at all. I thought I lost my chance. I went back to my cabin, and on the ship, there are no phones, right? We only have the landline in our room. I knew her room number because I looked it up on the directory, and I knew she was in the crew bar. So I was like, we've been drinking. It's probably 1 a.m. And I was like, I'm just going to call and leave a voicemail. And like half a ring, she picks up. And I was like, and just hung up. Just freaked out. I was like, how in the world? And then like 10 seconds later, my phone rings. I'm like, so I pick it up. And she's like, yeah, someone just called me from this number.
Oh, so you could like do the whole Star 69 thing on the boat?
She could. Because technically she was an officer of the ship. Her position gave her officer status. So not only was she able to see who called, but she had a little portable phone on her at all times. So when anybody would call her, she was like one of the only people that would have this phone, which I did not know. That's why she picked up right away. She was still in the crew bar, just got a call. And then called back and said, I got a number on this phone, or I got a phone call here. And I was like, yeah, I'm Timmy. We just met at the crew bar. I told you needed a second take. You don't need a second take. She goes, okay. It's like, oh, okay. And hung up. Thought it was done. Thought it was over. And there's a few days later, I saw her like on the main strip down the crew area. And she goes, what are you doing calling me at 3 a.m.? And I was like, oh, maybe this could still work, you know? Because she called me out like, what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, long story short, I brought her to Chicago. We got married. We got 2 kids. And now we're in Kentucky, my old Kentucky home.
You brought a redheaded Irish girl to Kentucky. Nice job.
It was probably a little longer than we thought. But hey, I think, it's about time the listeners get to know me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So supply and demand?
Yes. Tell me about supply and demand.
Okay, so back to Wolf of Wall Street. Supply and demand, Wolf of Wall Street. There's a scene where he's like, sell me this pen. He's teaching his new crew how to sell. It's like, sell me this pen. And a few of them try to do it, talk about how good it is or whatever. It's like, nope. Gives it to this other guy. Guy goes,
Brad, so now it's done. Boom. Sell me that pen. Watch. Go on. And you sell this pen? That's my boy right there. This pen. Sell anything. Would you do me a favor? Write your name down on a napkin for him. I don't have a pen.
and he throws the pen at him and goes, supply and demand, motherfucker. So when it comes to supply and demand, if there's a lot of supply, a lot of product, low demand, you're not in a good spot because you've got too much to sell, the value lowers. But the opposite happens when you've got low supply, high demand, that value goes up. So that's my understanding.
I would agree with that. I'd forgotten about that scene. Let's just really, really simplify this concept. Let's say you take you and 100 of your best friends, and I ask you to run a marathon. It's hot outside. You get to the end, and you are famished. You are thirsty, and there's 100 of you guys, and I have 2 bottles of water, and every one of you really want that bottle of water. There's a lot of demand. Demand, especially in real estate, demand is driven by people. It's people that use space. So when we're talking about demand, we're talking about people. Now, let's flip the script a little bit, and let's say the 100 of you finish the marathon and you're all famished, but all you see in front of you are water bottles. Like, what could I charge for a bottle of water if that were the case? Not very much. It's clear that there's a tremendous amount of supply. If the demand is high, like you said, and the supply is not there to meet the demand, then prices do what?
Go up.
When you think about the real estate market, what causes demand for space?
Vacancy. Oh, people.
If there's all of a sudden more people in a market, how long does it take the supply to catch up to the amount of demand? This is really the crux of what causes market cycles in commercial real estate. It's the answer to this question. So we've talked about Elizabethtown a lot. Ford is dropping 5,000 jobs. They're probably going to have 30, 40,000 more people living in Elizabethtown in a couple of years. How long does it take the supply to meet that demand?
Wouldn't it depend on the context or the...
Let's say in 2 years, there's going to be demand for 10,000 more apartments. How long is it going to take those 10,000 apartments to be built?
However long it takes to build apartments. Just a couple of years.
In Kentucky, that could be a year's worth of work before you actually start to move dirt and build anything. We were talking to Brad Arns a couple episodes ago, and in Southern California, it took him over 2 years, I believe, just to get to the point where he could start moving dirt and building something. So it takes a long time to create new supply to meet demand. So in commercial real estate, supply lags demand. It can take years to create the supply to meet the demand. And because of that, it always lags, and it causes these market cycles. Dr. Miller, who I mentioned before, what he did is he studied 50 markets, I believe, over a 30-year period of time. And he was able to see how 2 full market cycles behaved. And with that model, every quarter he puts out a new market cycle report that shows where all these different markets are. So what I want to do in this episode is I'm going to show you Dr. Miller's model. You can go to daniels.du.edu/Burns-school. You scroll to the bottom. Here's this market cycle report, and you can download. The most recent one is the first quarter of 2023. You can also go back and see the reports for previous years.
Is that the same college that Dr. Jeff Neistat?
Ingolstadt. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a professor there as well. Yep, they're colleagues.
Oh, so they know each other. Okay, yeah. He was going to be your introduction to Dr. Miller, right?
Yeah, I hope that still can happen. But yes.
I bet if we emailed him, he'd be like, yeah, sure. Not sure what he sounds like. Probably like, yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll be. Yeah, sure. Yes. Yeah, sure. I'll do that with you. It'd be more like, yeah,
so
sure.
here's the market cycle report.
Hey, yeah, I'll do
this is his. Are you still just trying to imitate a guy's voice that you've never heard?
I'm just going through voices.
Quit it, man. This is serious stuff right here, okay?
Yes, I know. Very serious. Yes.
I've lost you already. This is actually really, really important to know because different markets are in different places in the market cycle. Different property types are in different places in different markets. And so you can disaggregate all of this. And if you understand, the market that you're in, where it is in the market cycle, if you understand where the property is in its place in the market cycle, you can make some really great decisions. And if you don't know, you can make some big mistakes. And you could also be taken advantage of by the person you're negotiating with or doing the deal with. If they understand this information and you don't, you're at an intellectual disadvantage.
Well, the demand for my attention just went up.
Well, that's what I was trying to do.
Yeah, but the supply though is just...
So here's what I want to do. I want to take a look at his model, okay? It's essentially 4 quadrants, all right? You have recovery, expansion, hypersupply, and recession. And before your eyes start crossing, because I know this gets really, really potentially tedious.
I like pictures, though. I like a picture.
You've essentially got 4 quadrants, okay? That horizontal line there that says long-term occupancy, what that's talking about is when you apply this model to any market, that dividing line horizontally is the long-term occupancy of that market. And let's take office in Louisville, Kentucky. If you look back 30 years, average is 18% vacancy, let's say. So 18% vacancy would be 82% occupancy. So if the occupancy in office in that market is above 82%, you automatically know you're in phase 2 or phase 3. You're in expansion or hypersupply. This point number 11 has this vertical line here. Point number 11 is equilibrium, and this is the magical moment where supply meets demand. And so if you have more demand than you have supply, you're on the left side. You're either in phase 1 or phase 2. If you have more supply than you have demand, you're in either hypersupply or recession. So this is how this is broken out into the quadrants. Do you remember who my favorite athlete was when I was in high school?
Bo Jackson.
Yes.
I remember that poster.
So now, do you remember the 2 professional sports that Bo Jackson played? I know you're not a big sport nut, but you might remember that.
It's football and baseball.
I tried to play football for about 2 weeks.
Oh, really?
But what did I do?
You knocked over the hurdles.
Yeah, I ran track. They wouldn't cut you from the track team. And I was in the 4x100 relay race. And the way this worked out is we had 3 guys. We actually had 1 guy that had special kind of speed. Like he generally was the fastest guy on the track. Then we had 2 guys that had impressive speed. And then I was the fastest of the not so fast. I was the reason that our guy with the special speed had to catch everybody when it was his turn.
We should have all been wrestlers, man.
I think lacrosse would have been fun too, but we didn't have lacrosse either.
We're just low to the ground, big butts.
I want you to think about a 100-meter dash race, all right?
Okay.
Think about Usain Bolt or, Carl Lewis, or depending on how old you are. Think about the 100-meter race, and I think this, in some ways, represents well what the real estate market cycle is doing, okay? In that recovery phase 1 of the market cycle, you've got all the guys, they're getting ready for the race. They're behind the blocks. Can you picture this in your mind? Have you seen it enough, like in the Olympics and stuff? They're kind of jumping up and down. They're stretching out. They're shaking out their legs, but they're not even in the blocks yet. This is the recovery phase. Demand is starting to increase, but it hasn't increased enough to drive rents up enough to where it makes sense to build any new supply.
Yeah.
In the recovery phase, nobody's really building anything. It just doesn't make sense. The rents aren't there to justify the cost of building something new. And so nothing really happens in the recovery phase in terms of new supply. Builders aren't really out there building. They might be planning some stuff and just waiting for the market to come back. Demand is increasing, rents are increasing, occupancy is increasing all throughout phase one of recoveries. You've got declining vacancy, which means occupancy is going up. There's more demand, but there's no new construction. And as demand increases, what does rent do?
It goes up.
That's right. So demand is increasing here and rent is increasing as well. And your occupancy rate is building up to the point where you have reached the long-term occupancy average for whatever market you're in. Okay. Once that happens, the developers get in the blocks. These sprinters that are about to run this 100-meter race, they're getting in the blocks. All right. That starts phase two of expansion. Now, the key here, though, is nobody's running yet. The race is impending. Like the guy with the gun, the starter gun, like he's about to hold up his hand and press the trigger. But at 0.6 and 0.7, these developers, these racers, runners, sprinters, they're in the blocks, but they're not running yet. There's this magical 0.8 here that's green. All right. 0.8 is the point where the guy fires the gun. At 0.8, rents have risen enough to where it is now profitable to build new supply. That's what's special about 0.8. There's enough rent now and there's enough new demand that it makes sense to build new supply. And so 0.8, boom, gun goes off. These guys start running. And what they're doing is they're trying to deliver their supply to the market before all the other racers. So what happens at 0.11 is this is where they basically cross the finish line. I think a couple Olympics in a row, Usain Bolt was the fastest man alive. Do you remember what he would do after he'd win a gold medal? He'd kind of drape that Jamaican flag and kind of lean back, do that. Yep, I'm the fastest man alive kind of thing.
Yeah.
He's the guy who delivers his new supply to the market first. And as these developers start finishing the race and delivering their new supply to the market, well, you'll get to 11. You've reached equilibrium. But the market, in my opinion, stays there for about this long. Like it's a blink and you'll miss it. Just take Elizabethtown, for example, okay? They're going to get all these new people in the coming years. And let's say, I think, man, I'm going to go down there, I'm going to buy 4 acres, and I'm going to build a self-storage facility there. They're going to need a lot more self-storage. In that sprint race, Usain Bolt can look to his left, and he can look to his right, and he can see everybody he's racing against. In the real world of commercial real estate development, that's not the case. I can look at Elizabethtown and say, all this new demand's coming. They're going to need more self-storage. I can go find me a great site. I can start building, and there could be 20 other people that have the same idea, and I don't even know they're out there. What happens is, and this happens every time in every market cycle, is developers overbuild demand. Somebody's going to lose that race and come in last. And by the time that they've come in last, you're into hypersupply. Your occupancy rates are starting to fall back down to that long-term average. And there's still new construction happening. And you don't know that somebody else is 4 months ahead of you on the other side of town. You may not know. In small town Kentucky, you probably will know. You're talking about New York City, Chicago, LA, Houston, Dallas, St. Louis, Indianapolis, Denver, these markets that are just really big. You don't have full visibility on what everybody else is doing. And so developers always, in every market cycle, they overbuild. But people still have to finish these projects, which just continues to provide more supply than there is demand. And eventually, and this is where hypersupply, this is where the guys that lose the race cross the finish line. They've lost. And it takes us down to that 0.14 where, again, we're at that long-term average of occupancy. Some of those projects that were started when developers didn't even realize that we were already into hypersupply, they'll finish those projects all the way into phase 4 recession. Have you seen those races? This generally isn't at the end of a sprint race, but at the end of like a 5K, the guy who wins is feeling good. But the guy who loses is generally like puking his guts out. You know, he's got his hands over his knees and he exerted all that effort and he lost big. These are the people that complete their projects when we're into the recessionary period. And it is brutal for them. And by this point, lots of vacancy in the market, rents have dropped, and we're into this recessionary period. And it gets down to that 0.1. That 0.1 is the same in phase 4 as it is in phase 1. That's the bottom of the market. And so because supply lags demand so much in commercial real estate, it just takes so long, it creates these market cycles in commercial real estate. Does that make sense? Like, is that clear?
Yes. Yep. We had marker number 8 where the race gun goes off and everybody can go, right? Is it too risky to begin the race or begin developing before that point? Can't some people who understand this get ahead of the game and start the race sooner?
That's exactly the right question. Like, understanding how the market cycles work should lead you to the point to, all right, how do I start running before everybody else? You know, we teach this concept in 102, right? The CCIM class. I've never heard of it before then. You hear about market cycles on the news, you know, but I've never seen a model for it. So yeah, if you understand where you are, you might be able to get in front of everybody else. Even if you're a slower runner, you start earlier, you can still win the race, you know? And if you were able to deliver your product at 0.8 or at 0.9, if you can deliver your product at 0.8, the rents at that point are there to justify the expense.
Right.
And you don't have to wait for the gun to go off to start running. So that's a very insightful question. And one of the things that we emphasize is if we understand where we are, and as a commercial real estate professional, regardless of the market or the property type, you should understand where we are in the market. So yeah, great question there.
Well, thank you very much.
So I was listening to my friend Bob Knackle, all right, legendary broker out of New York City. And he was on the Trepwire podcast. Bob gave a lot of statistics on New York City about the number of transactions is down, the value of those transactions is down. Like, we're in a down section. And then he said this, at the end of every down market is an up market every time. And that's a really good point. And Dr. Miller's model makes the same assertion. When you hit 0.1 at the very end of recession, that's also the very beginning point of recovery. So at the end of every down market, there's an up market. And there are all kinds of people in the commercial real estate industry right now that got in after 2010, 2011. And if that's true of you listening right now, and this is your first down market, you really need to hear this. There's always a recovery after. But this one we've had has already been kind of a couple years long, and that's about how long they generally are. But what down markets do is they get rid of the hobbyists. The people who weren't really serious about the commercial real estate industry, they didn't want to go through the hard times, they've gone and done something else. It culls the herd, and it allows you to pick up market share in a down market and position yourself as an expert and to really refine your skills and prepare for that next up market where you can absolutely pick up market share and just do really, really well. So I, in some ways, don't enjoy downturns, but I look forward to the ability that it gives us to reposition and get ready for things to take off again